Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Perth Blue Baggers pod. My name is Louis, your host.
And I'm Marty on special comments.
In this episode, we'll be previewing our win against the West Coast Eagles at our turf, and we'll be previewing our must-win clash against the St Kilda Saints in our last round. So let's get into the review of round 23 versus West Coast. That was the crucial 4 points we needed. The Perth Blue Baggers couldn't be any happier. What a day at Optus Stadium. The Blues delivered the much needed win, leaving us all with smiles. With a revamped forward line, Brodie Kemp shined with a career-high 4 goals, while debutant Ashton Moyer and second gamer Jackson Binns joined in the action too. And then we have Patrick Cripps and George Hewitt, who are unstoppable in the middle, and they each collected 35 disposals. It was a day to remember for the Perth faithful.
Yeah, it was just it was really fantastic. It was just a really gutsy win. I mean, this has to be one of the best wins of the season, just because of how down and out we were. You know, we were out of form, and we had a ton of injuries. I know that West Coast, you know, they're 15th or 16th or 17th or something on the ladder. You know, they're not a great team, but really for us to come out and I mean, we didn't have a recognised key forward. We weren't even sure how we're going to kick a winning score. You know, I thought the first quarter was a bit of a tussle. I think we only kicked the goal, hit the front when Brodie Kemp kicked a goal on the siren. But the next quarter, 3 quarters, 4 goals to zip in the second quarter, 5 goals to zip to 1 in the third, and 3 goals to 1 in the fourth. Just really dominant. And the pressure and the intensity that was lacking in previous games returned. There's a sense of desperation. And maybe it was because the season was on the line. It really was fantastic. It was a great one to see.
Indeed. It was very good to see an adaptable and unconventional forward line. So, had to lower the eyes to try and pick out targets more. Matt Kennedy and Brodie Kemp stepped up, and so did the Smalls and Motlop, Durden, always. Very much a collective effort. I reckon the energy from the players on debut sort of brought some fresh energy to the team. Like the new players embraced their opportunities and played their roles well, adding to like a positive momentum, and the leaders were able to thrive on that as well and provide some guidance.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, it was almost like the two that were in the main team, Binns and Lord, is like the longer they were on the game went on, the more confidence they got. And it probably helped that we're on top, I reckon. But really, they were really lively. Binns had a slightly slow start, but he got going pretty quickly. Lord did some really great things. They both provide a lot of run and energy. But, you mentioned the small forwards, Louis. Like, this was what our small forwards probably weighted too much on Curnow and Mackay to do the job for them in previous weeks. And both those players that, you can't be up every game, and Curnow is probably carrying an injury or something. He hadn't been quite as dominant lately. And so they're just expecting those guys to say, take hold of the game. And often Curnow did in the third quarter, didn't he? So, but this time they knew it was up to them. And Corey Durden, I thought, had a really good game. He had 14 touches and he was really lively early. Zach Williams got amongst it. I think he's a funny guy. He just seems to be a bit of a chaos forward, Zach Williams. He's for someone who's played a lot of time in the back line before this season, he knows where the ball falls, though. And he's got a good forward sense. And he's often quite creative for the players around him. So I just thought that was the one thing the small forwards really stood up. I thought we deliberately went in with a smaller, quicker team, and we moved the ball fast as well. And I think that really helped us. We linked up well, moved the ball fast, because I think we knew that if we just hung on to it too long and bombed it in, McGovern and Barras would just punish us. So those guys, we thought they'd be a problem, but they weren't really, because as you say, we lowered our eyes and tried to hit up targets more effectively.
Yep. Another thing to add on the forward line, we got significantly a lot more tackles inside 50, which has been lacking the last few weeks as well. That really is the pressure we're talking about.
Really crucial, and just that pressure and intensity. And look, it might have helped. Like I said, West Coast did make some mistakes at key junctures, with the ball, and that probably exacerbated things. They've got a pretty young lineup themselves, but certainly just that energy was there. And I think we're going to come to some of our key players pretty soon. And we had a couple of players that really stood up and helped us, especially in the first half.
Yep. So now the attention turns to the future with something gives us lots of confidence going into St Kilda, but we'll get into that a bit later. Let's do the notable performances. So your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 votes first.
Oh, look. For me, Captain Cripps was best on ground, comfortably best on ground. He was really dominant. 21 touches in the first half alone. I ended up with 35. I think he spent the last few minutes on the bench and the last quarter just to ease him up. 10 clearances. That was the most on the ground. And if you look at the highlights, he's just in the middle of it all the time. 21 of those 35 touches were contested possessions. I mean, that's more than a lot of players on the ground get. And 8 times inside 50, he just willed the team on, and he was just amazing. So that's my 5. For Georgie Hewitt, how good was he? Like, ever since he got dropped and came back into the team, he's just been fantastic. 35 touches, 10 tackles, most on ground. That, you talked about, Louis, about how the sort of lack of tackling in the previous weeks. This time it was back. And he not only won a lot of the ball, but he was also really good without the ball too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yep.
3 votes to Pitnet. There's a few others, quite a few players that get votes, but he had the second most clearances in the game, 8 for a ruckman. And he beat both of the West Coast ruckmen that were tag teaming him. He worked really hard around the ground. A lot of us were worried when TDK went down, and still TDK is a pretty amazing player. But Pitnet, stepped up to work hard, and he was really good today, I thought. 2 votes to Brody Kemp. I mean, maybe he could have got 3, I don't know, but he was. Everyone's been talking about him ever since the game, all game and since. For him to be swung forward and kick 4 goals, wow! And he was just a great target all game. He just kept presenting, brought the smalls into it as well. His first goal, right on the quarter siren, I thought was really instrumental. It gave us some momentum going into the second quarter, and then the second quarter was when he really put down. And so, and that last that sort of flying mark that he took, So he was that good. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of him in the forward line. Certainly when one of Charlie and Harry come back, but could he be a third target in the forward line? Who knows? He was I'd be reluctant to take him out of the forward line at the moment. He was that good. I've gone with Jacob Wittering in the end. There's lots of options. I just, for me, it was the 12 intercept possessions. It's, for him to be intercepting that often, the next highest on the ground was 7. He just totally towed up the West Coast captain. But it wasn't just beating your opponent. He's also stopping all your opposition thrusts, and keeping the opposition to the score like that. That's, that's in no small part to Jacob Wettering and how good he was. So, hats off to him. So he's my 1. But look, just a few other guys I just wanted to mention because it was that kind of game. Corey Durden was fantastic, 14 touches, particularly good in the first half. One of his better games for us. I don't think Corey's had a fantastic season. And I think without the injuries, he wouldn't have got a run. But I think he's a shoo-in if he's fit. We'll talk about that. He's a test. Unfortunately, he had a shoulder injury. But he was so good. Ollie Hollins ran all day and went really hard. I just like Zach Williams in the forward line. He sort of reminded us of earlier this year. And, one guy that hadn't had much talk about since the game, but the ever reliable Nick Newman, 25 touches, the most metres gained on the ground, 11 marks. That was also the most on the ground. He was everywhere too. And one final one, we pick an underrated player. I don't know if we can keep calling him underrated or if we keep doing this. Lockie Cowan. This guy is turning into a star. The longer he plays, the better he plays. And he's just growing in confidence week in, week out. He's still a really young player. And I think he's been an absolute revelation. And I'm pretty much, we'll see how round 24 goes. I'm pretty much giving him my best, most improved player at the club this year.
Yeah. And he deserves a Rising Star nomination. He's been robbed of it the whole year.
I can't believe he has one. It might be why defenders get ignored sometimes, don't they?
Also, they try and pick their first year players as well. Like he still qualifies, same thing. Anyway, I'll get into my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 votes. Yeah, I have Patrick Cripps carry the team. Then I have 4 votes for George Hewitt. Great performance from him. Brodie Kemp for 3 votes. Ollie Hollands with 2 votes. So, yeah, he had a very good offensive flair, and he also had a defensive responsibility too. And it has had a few consistent performances lately, which is good to see. So, 24 disposals, 4 marks, 7 tackles, 6 intercepts, 9 score involvements, 19 pressure acts, and 5 rebound 50s. I also just want to quickly go back to Kemp. He really neutralized Jeremy McGovern by consistently contesting and bringing the ball to ground, which allowed for the small forwards to either bring the pressure on through tackles or collect the ball themselves and have a shot at goal. And then we have 1 vote for Jacob Wiedering, who shut down Oscar Allen. So those are mine. And then obviously there's all the other players that get special mentions. And very hard 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 votes to do, I must say.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's last time round we had trouble. I had trouble finding 5 really good players. This time it's the opposite. Who could you keep out? There was that many solid players, so it's good to see such a spread. I think it speaks to this time round how broad the impact was. We weren't relying. I know Cripps had a great game, but we weren't just relying on 1 or 2 players. A lot of players play well.
Yeah, very good to see. So let's get into the preview of round 24 versus St Kilda. Very much a must-win game. Not quite. It wouldn't be quite classified as do or die, because even if we do lose that game, Freo would have to lose so we can qualify for finals. But I don't want to put us in that sort of position. Game's in our hands. Our destiny is in our hands. So what do you want to say about?
Look, it was a great win last week, but let's keep in mind we've beaten in the wins we've got recently in the last couple of months have all come against the 3 lowest ranked teams in the competition in West Coast, North Melbourne, and Richmond. And Saints to have won the last 4 out of 5. So they've been good. Now, admittedly, until Geelong, some of the other ones I don't really rate Essendon that highly this year. I think they've beaten a few teams, which I think West Coast was amongst that, and perhaps Richmond. They've beat a few teams which themselves were low on the ladder. But look, this last week against Geelong, they were fantastic. They've been mostly a defensive team, but they kicked 7 goals to 1 the third quarter and 6 goals in the fourth quarter. So they kicked 13 goals and a half football against a pretty good team in Geelong. So they can play, and they're building in form. And so I think they're not going to be pushovers. They'll be quite challenging. And there's a lot of players playing well. Rowan Marshall is one of the better ruckmen in the competition, and he's in pretty good form, I reckon. Callum Wilkie is in pretty good form. I think he was pretty dominant. There's Jack Steele is very consistent midfielder. And the two Jacks, Jack Sinclair, also pretty consistent midfielder. Darcy Wilson's playing well. I mean, there's quite a few players that are playing well, and he's not necessarily in great form, but Tim Membry always plays well against us for some reason. It's always difficult. So and the Saints have mostly proved challenging for us in recent times. So I don't think we push over. I think we've got to bring that same intensity and all-round team performance that we had this time. There's a chance of getting some players back. I guess we'll talk injuries shortly. Yeah. But I think that whilst they're defensive, I think they've flicked the switch of late, and they're playing a more attacking brand of football. The Saints.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it there. I don't have that much more to add. And I got a dangerous forward in Jack Higgins. So, see how we match up against him. Think we'll get the job done. And, well, let's get into injury news so we can decide who comes in.
I'm sighing because we've still got a lot of injuries, haven't we?
Yeah.
We got 5 tests, and we've got Curnow, Sard, Durden, Fantasia, and Marchbank, who are all tests. I do wonder about whether Charlie's 100%. I mean, I'd only rather he play if he's really fit. Look, obviously he's an amazing if he's fit and firing, but we want him to be 100%. I think Sard would be really welcome back. Very handy addition out of those ones. Like I said, Durden played really well for us on the weekend, so it'd be nice if he could back it up. We haven't had a lot of Fantasia and Marchbank this season anyway. Both of them have had quite a bit of injuries, but there's still plenty that are not coming back. And we've had an additional problem in Mitch McGovern, who I thought was excellent on the weekend. Another player we could have mentioned. He's also got some hamstring tightness, so he's a 50-50 chance too. So, yeah, let me tight one. It's still injuries.
Yeah, so due to that, it's probably quite hard to actually determine who comes in and who comes out. So I'm thinking, I thought that Harry Mackay would be more likely than Charlie Curnow to come in, but apparently not. So we'll see whether we still have that key forward, but most likely I think in would be Curnow and Sard, out Durden and Moyle, who will be omitted because I think might be a bit too stacked in the forward line, I'm thinking. It's all to do with who's available, really. And we won't know that until, Thursday night when they announce an extended squad, and then Friday, the official squad for Sunday's match.
Yeah, we'll really get a better indication on Friday as to how many people are available. It's a bit difficult without knowing who's coming in. It's a bit difficult to know who's going out. Probably the only thing I'd differ with, if Durden was fit, I reckon he probably holds his position in the team. After that performance, but and maybe one of the newbies in Binns or Lord go out, which would be a bit tough on them because I think they're both great. But sometimes it's kind of like last one in, first one out, unless you're really, really impressed, But I mean, I'd like to see both of them get another opportunity because I think they both put a lot of work in and both made an impact.
Yeah, true that. Yeah, so I guess we'll wait and see. Let's do some predictions.
Oh, look, I reckon Blues by 10 to make the finals.
Yeah, good. I'll say Blues by 14. Reasonably close one, but we'll kick a few clutch goals at the end to seal the deal.
Will it be 2023 where we finish strongly, or will it be 2022 where we blew things, miss by a point at the end? So I think that there's a lot on the line, but I reckon the boys got to bounce after such a solid gutsy effort last week.
Yep. Let's see whether Akers can possibly do another clutch moment like he did against the Saints last time.
That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So thank you for watching episode 15 of the Perth Blue Baggers pod. If you have any thoughts, please comment below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. Thank you. Up the Baggers.
Calm the Blues.